I think we've got some roving microphones. I hope we have. Yes, we do. So if you can put up your hands, and when you get one, if you can please say your organisation and your name, that would be helpful.
Martin Brown, DMVGL, but coming from the Noble Denton side of the business. Just about the fast feeder vessel, the jack-up one, I was curious as to whether you've taken into account the weather conditions required to jack down when you're alongside the wind turbine installation vessel, because I'm kind of guessing in relatively harsh North Sea environments that could be quite, could delay you.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting one of my own colleagues to be giving me difficult questions. Thanks for that. We'll have a chat later. No, seriously, yes, indeed. Obviously, the different HS limits on the jacking operations are, of course, key. The overall scenarios associated with the capabilities of the fast feeder vessel, what its maximum jacking capacity will be, what maximum wave state environment in which it can jack is obviously a variable that we've been looking at in terms of the amount of waiting on weather time. The more capable the vessel is, the less waiting on weather time there will be, but probably the greater the cost of the vessel. So we've been factoring those into the various runs we've been doing on the analysis. It'd be very good to talk with you later on and share a bit more about what we have been doing and get your thoughts and we.
Thank you.
Question down here at the front.
Sorry, one at the back here as well, and I've got a microphone already. Hi, Charles. It's David Parkin here from Atkins. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, just a quick question. Are you seeing any appetite for institutional investment pre-construction in offshore wind? And if so, are people considering sort of multi-contract projects, or are they all sort of going for nice risk-bound EPC wrap type approaches?
We are seeing interest in institutional investor. It's mostly where you've got a big utility like DOM who are taking most of the construction risk. And the institutions generally say, okay, we'll invest early, but you don't guarantee that we don't take any construction risk, that if there's a cost overrun, you'll pay it. If it's late, you'll compensate us for that. And then with Dong taking all the risk, they then let Dong get on and worry about the contracting model. Down at the front.
Yeah, Jan Mathiesen from the Carbon Trust. I have a question for Daniel, actually. I was wondering, if I understood correctly, the allocation for the contract for difference will be for certain technologies on a competitive basis. And I was wondering whether you think this will actually drive down costs and maybe also innovations to make projects more competitive.
Thanks. I think that's certainly the hope, and I think the idea is that for those technologies that are established, they're at a point in their development and on the learning curve where if you force them to compete with each other, then they will start bidding in lower prices, offering lower prices. I think there's some question about whether for the technologies that are in a less established phase, whether, I was having a discussion last night about this, whether you're at a stage in the development of those technologies where actually collaboration and sharing of techniques and is more likely to spur innovation than kind of individual competition. So I think there's a question about that. But certainly the hope is that through the auctioning process, you'll select the lowest bids, and that will certainly drive lower costs. I mean, what it might also do, and what you've seen in other auction regimes, is that you have people effectively bidding a bit speculatively, taking an option out, or just hoping that their project turns out lower cost, and someone else being a bit more conservative in bidding, they don't win. You then have problems with selecting the bidders who are the winners, who maybe have been a bit more aggressive and maybe run into problems. But it remains to be seen. I think hopefully people have learned a bit from running these kinds of renewables auctions, how to structure them and select qualified bidders in advance so that doesn't happen as much.
Question down here at the front. Well, I think we've got time for a couple more questions. There's another session at 4, so we'll have a couple more questions, then we'll have to wrap up, I'm afraid.
Hi, so Mauricio Bermudez from Near Economic Consulting. So we haven't coordinated on each of our companies asking one of our panelists a questions. One for you, Charles. Mini plug, Dan already mentioned that study we did for DEC, and there, in looking at the regulatory risk and speaking to quite a few investors, we heard that there might be anything between 100 and 200 basis points at the time when we did the study in the autumn of last year, as the details of the CFDs were being disclosed by DEC. You know, fast forward to the moment in time where we are right now in your discussions with investors, do you have a sense of the type of risk premium that investors are still factoring in for the things that we're yet to learn in the regulations of the EMR?
I think thank you, very interesting question. I think the answer depends on technologies or even firms. So for example, Dong I'd characterize as pretty gung-ho. They said the regulations are good enough. They sort of trust the UK government, I think, to do handle them in a reasonable way, and I don't think they attach much of a risk premium, you know, tens of basis points. There are other companies who I think, big UK-based utilities who are very exposed to UK political risk and are being much more wary because, you know, for Dong, the UK is a very important market, but it's not their home market and can go elsewhere. If you're one of the 2 big UK-based utilities, if political risk really gets out of hand here, that's very fundamental, so they're quite scared. But I think the big utilities doing offshore wind are pricing in that risk in a fairly rational, sensible way. But I think there are some other smaller developers, for example, some of the onshore wind people, who are just saying, I don't understand CFDs, they sound very, very complicated, and they're just saying, I don't want to do them. So I'll continue with the RO to 2017, I'll do as many projects as I possibly can, and then in 2017, maybe I'll have got comfortable with CFDs by then, or maybe I'll go and do something else, or go to another country. So I think it varies a great deal, is the short answer. I think we've got, perhaps, if there's one more question.
I've got a question to Charles, if there's anyone else in the panel. It's a question for you, actually, Charles. I mean, it was interesting to see your EMR hiatus. Is there a Scottish independence hiatus blip which is sitting on the curve somewhere?
I think that there may be, but much less of a hiatus for 2 reasons. One, that EMR affected all of the UK and all the UK waters, whereas Scotland's only part of it. And quite a lot of the offshore wind farm projects so far have been in English waters, although there are increasing numbers in Scottish waters. 2, I think there's an Alex Salmon effect, where a lot of people believe that if there is independence, Alex Salmon will be in the driving seat, and he has been very staunchly and consistently pro-renewables, and I think that reduces the risk quite substantially. However, saying that, it does depend, and there are certain investor groups, some of the Asian investors, for example, are just saying, we're not going to invest in Scotland till we know how this pans out. And given they've only got a few months to wait now. So in some areas there may be a hiatus, but I don't think it'll be anywhere near as pronounced as we're seeing over the next couple of years. Well, we've run out of time. Thank you very much all for your attention. I think a number of us are staying around, so if you do want to have a discussion, I'm sure we'll be happy to. And I invite you all to thank the various speakers.